create in your mind the image of an iceberg, and there's much that you can see above the water surface, but plenty that you can't. In fact, the majority of it is below the waterline. My guest today, Vivian Acquah, is an inclusion strategist, and she's helped remind me of the importance of seeing invisible barriers, or noticing, responding to invisible barriers when we're leading other people. And there's plenty of opportunities and plenty of wins for business if we do so. I'd like you to listen and to take on board some of the key practical tips that she offers. And I trust that this will help you to look below the waterline, to seek below the waterline, the unseen in others. Take a listen and enjoy. Welcome, Vivian, to the After Dinner Leadership podcast. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, Simon.
Yeah, likewise. And one of the things that I love to find out from people straight away, to give us a little bit of context to who you are, what food reminds you of your childhood? Considering we're around the after dinner leadership table. So what's the food?
The food that I would eat the most would be Ghanaian jollof rice. I am putting an emphasis on Ghanaian because there is this whole West African jollof war going on, which is a friendly war. But the Ghanaian jollof rice reminds me of my roots, my heritage, which is Ghana. And it also reminds me of my grandmother as well. So that, to me, is my favorite dish.
Great. And if you imagine yourself eating as a child, where are you? What conjures up in your memory as you're eating these fries?
Definitely on a warm day, whether it's in the Netherlands or maybe somewhere tropical in Ghana or maybe in Spain, and eating this together with friends and family and having a good conversation, right? It's not only about food for our body, but also having a conversation that really amplifies the food for our soul, to have that elevated conversation with the people that are in the room.
Great. Well, that leads us nicely into this space now. We don't physically have the food, but if you can imagine that and a rich conversation that we'll have, I'm delighted to have you here. And I'd love for you to go back again in time a little bit to, not too long, but if you can imagine yourself as an early 20-year-old, like in your early 20s, what was memorable about you at that time of your life?
My early 20s was, I think I was rebellious as well, but also not knowing where to start, how to embark my career journey, and also what do I like. So I started my career as a financial consultant, basically because I didn't know which environment I would try, but also I wanted to learn more. And it's funny now to talk about this, but let's say that I used to be more introverted. I'm an ambivert. So after this call, I need to woosah and recharge my batteries. But people think that because of my length and because of the ombre hair that I'm an extrovert, which I'm not. I'm extroverted for the elements that I have to do for gaining visibility and for public speaking and also engaging with clients. But I'm in my shell at home where the introverted Vivian shows up, right? So I would tell myself that as an introvert, you should train your muscle and engage in, for instance, comedy training or comedy shows so that you can learn how you can embrace your public speaking muscles as well, and that your voice is welcomed. That's it.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And did you have a mentor of any sort at that time? They may not have been called that, but someone that was able to guide and support in your early 20s?
The mentorship started later. No, I wouldn't say that I would have a mentor at that time because I'm the first of the first in this generation. And if I would look back, I would say my grandmother is more some kind of a mentor, but not career-wise. She's more of a mentor as in the personal development skills and leadership, right? That's what I seek in her. But when it comes to professionally, let's say that I was swimming around not knowing what I needed, but also not realizing that I need to seek out for mentors. And you have to realize that in the early 2000s, mentorship was predominantly given for leaders and for people in higher positions. So the terminology as the way that it's used right now, it wasn't as common as it would use right now. Right now, I would tell everybody who finished their education, whether it's the bachelor degree or university degree, right, that they seek out mentorship as soon as possible, and also connect with people that they want to learn from more when it comes to their career path.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pleased that you mentioned your grandmother, because I wasn't necessarily fishing for a business mentor, just anyone who you considered to be a
Mm-hmm.
mentor, and I'm pleased of her impact on you. You mentioned rebellious as a character trait as the first thing you
Mm-hmm.
said. Was that linked
Yeah.
to your grandmother, or is that independent of her?
No, it's more linked to growing up between two cultures, whereas I have a Ghanaian culture that is where I'm being raised up humble, and growing up in the Netherlands, as in you speak your mind, but of course respectful, and being
Yes.
somewhere in between. So rebellious when it comes to my Ghanaian heritage that says like you have to be humble. But then the Dutch upbringing is more like, okay, but you are speaking up, and that's good. That's good, right? So I felt rebellious towards my parents, but also my upbringing, because that's not how I was supposed to operate. But to thrive in this Western society, I have to melt both those cultures so that I can be
Yes.
me.
Yeah. Fascinating. Thank you so much, and lovely to get that insight already. What three leadership lessons do you wish you'd learned earlier?
Mm, don't get me started. Definitely self leadership, knowing that
Hmm.
in the past when I saw the title leader or leadership, I disconnected, I disassociated with that, and also didn't. I mean, maybe I saw myself, but then maybe 15 years or 10 years later, and realizing what the power of owning your self leadership and training your self leadership muscles, and realizing that I did have leadership skills, but because I didn't have an official title, I disconnected from that, right? So I want people to know that no matter where you are a self leader if you don't have that official title, and that you already can work on the leadership skills that may be necessary for your next role or your future role. The
Yeah.
second thing that I wish I had known was neurodiversity. So
Hmm.
to share more about it, I'm neurodivergent. And I only came to this route just 3 years ago through a VR training that I was providing, realizing that people were talking about me or elements about me, but not seeing neurodiversity or being neurodivergent as myself, because I always associated this topic or being neurodivergent, especially when it comes to ADHD and autism or being on the autism spectrum. I associated with that being the Piano Man or Forrest Gump or even Dory. I mean, I could connect myself with Dory, but I didn't know that Dory was at the time, labeled as neurodivergent as well.
Yeah.
And the third one
Okay.
is
Yes.
working on my own career path. So defining my own career path, but also investing in my learning and development. Not laying back and thinking, well, my manager will invest in me. Crafting that message or advocating or pitching for. I need this training, and I want to use this to for my professional development, but also for my personal development as well. Oftentimes, I looked at the budget, and oftentimes there wasn't a budget or there wasn't a written budget, right? So I didn't seek after it. And now that I know better, I would say whether the budget is in the papers or in the policies or not, you should always advocate for what you want to learn, because you should never stop learning. Oh, there's always a time to learn. So invest in training, invest in courses, invest in listening to podcasts, and distill from the different podcasts, because there is always something to learn and to reflect upon.
Yeah, I agree. As part of the magic of life is if we can keep that learning
Mm-hmm.
momentum going throughout it, I think. I'd love
Yeah.
to maybe link that back to the point about neurodiversity for a moment. You mentioned that you were
Mm-hmm.
doing some VR training 3 years ago, and that
Yeah.
helped you to become aware. Could you give us a little bit more on how those two things, how the VR training produced that output?
Yeah, so in my training, I provide people to walk a mile in my shoes or somebody else's shoes, right? Given to the different teams that we have, and one of the themes is being walking a mile in a neurodivergent person, where it allows people to encounter microaggression. It allows people to experience what the impact of good intention gone bad means, but also to experience that even though you think somebody is included, that they are excluded, and how it feels to a lot of people. Because there are so many books, there are so many videos, and there are so many series, but not everybody can really grapple and understand what it means to be excluded. So for people to immerse themselves and walk a mile in my shoes, that they can experience that, but also can connect it to that. Because the beauty of using virtual reality, and I have to say that I'm using realistic scenes because I don't know, and I'm staying away from avatar experience because I don't know who is a gamer. Not everybody is a gamer, and not everybody can connect with that, right? But they can connect with real human, and they can connect with the distaste that it creates when they see something that is not ethical or not inclusive, right? And the moment that they see that, it will never ever leave them. And it's a better way or a faster way to connect with people, their intrinsic motivation. So in the past, I needed like 4 or 5 trainings to get people to embrace and understand and raise the level of awareness. And now we dip them into the great ocean, and they come out swimming like, okay, but I don't want this feeling. I don't want this feeling for my manager. I don't want this feeling for my team members. What can I do to prevent this from happening? Because if you are a leader and somebody steps towards you and discloses incivility, something that happened in the workplace or workplace harassment, you want to be able to support them and not say, was it really the case? Because then you're re traumatizing that person. So support them, and being a leader to be able to understand that, but also to activate your empathy muscle. That's a whole new skill. And luckily, I am using innovative tools like virtual reality to support leaders into understanding how they become better leaders, but also an empathic leader as well.
Yeah. And how did that link you to discovering the point around your own neurodivergence?
Yeah, so during the training, we set up the training with maximum 10 people, and every time I was hosting a session, people were disclosing their own neurodivergent traits, right? Their own characteristics and
Right.
skills and what they went through. And I was just like, but that's me. But
I
I'm not.
see.
I
Right. Got
haven't
it.
been tested ADHD or with autism, right? But that's me. You're talking about me. So it took me a while to grasp what people are saying, but not realizing that I have those moments when I'm at an event and it's very crowded. I can disconnect. Even though I'm standing there and I might be talking to you, but I can disconnect myself. So I can also be known as a Dory. So in my mind, I have like 100 tabs open. On my best day, I
Yeah.
can close it, maybe half. But when it's busy and when I'm stressed or low battery, right? So this is the season for being very mindful of your battery. Then I could be having dealing with 100 tabs. And I also know that when I do the VR training, the next day I need to do something else or something less impactful or still impactful, but not as heavy, because every time that we do those sessions, it's very immersive, not only for the participant, but it also is asking a lot of energy and time and headspace from my end as well.
Yeah. And if you had learned that earlier, so we talk about what lessons you wish you'd learned earlier. You said this point around neurodiversity. If you'd learned that earlier, what difference do you feel that would have made?
Ooh, I would have been able to advocate for myself. I've worked in environments where the lighting, and it sounds maybe very silly, but working in an office that doesn't provide daylight, it kills my productivity. Literally, I've been working in
Right.
environments where I was further away from the window, and for me, being able to sit nearby the window or just see outside and see some daylight is very beneficial for myself. Open offices, it's a hell for me. Why? Let's say that you're working in an open office with 30 people, and there are two or three people talking about how their weekend went. They are hijacking my attention with their conversation being broadcasted at the open office. And that's not,
Uh-huh.
that's not only me, but it's also hijacking other people, their productivity. I'm not saying that you're not allowed to have a conversation. There's a place and a time, but also knowing, the different communication styles of people, the different ways of work style for people is very beneficial for not only the individual, but also the whole team, so that they can understand what works best for the team and understand that certain conversations need to be held somewhere in the canteen or somewhere outside, or at least in places where you're not disturbing the productivity.
Yeah. That's perhaps a nice bridge into this topic of thinking about kind of the invisible aspects of people's lives that we don't see, and
Mm-hmm.
how do we
Yeah,
lead in that environment. So there's some things that we just won't know about individuals that we're
true.
working with from face value, if you like, or from first meeting
Mm-hmm.
somebody. And
Yeah.
what thoughts have you got in terms of how leaders can develop this inclusive mindset and set of behaviors? How do we help leaders to respond to the unseen?
It starts with first investing in providing awareness training, right? If it's not the VR training, then provide something, awareness training regarding DEI or regarding neurodiversity or regarding becoming a neuro-inclusive leader. When I'm at the airport and I don't have my hidden disability, I don't know if you know that lanyard. So some people wear a lanyard with a sunflower. That's the hidden
Yeah.
disability recognition of you not shouting that you have a hidden disability, but a lot of people at the airport are trained to support you and are also realizing that you might not be thriving best at a very crowded space. So there are quiet spaces that you can ask for, given that you wear that lanyard as well. Um, Reading books, having that, many leaders have a coach, but they don't have a DEI coach supporting them to become more inclusive, right? So I would say add that element as well and challenge yourself by being coached with somebody that doesn't look like you. I know that it's very favorable to connect yourself with somebody that understands you from your point of view, but add somebody on top of that so that they can help you and understand that the barriers that you may face are different than the barriers that your team members may face, and that you can unlock more empathy by having courageous conversations, by amplifying psychological safety as well. And it starts with you as a leader creating that safe space so that you can be open and vulnerable about it to unlock vulnerability within your team members as well. Because you as a leader, you need all the people, given the fact that there is a talent shortage in whole of Europe, and it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse every year as well. So we need all the people from different generations, all hands on deck, to support you as a leader.
Yeah. And I tell you where my mind went there around the coaching
Yeah.
piece. That just made me think about the people I've had coach me and who's coaching me at the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
this idea of what's a classic process is some form of chemistry call that you might have with a
Mm-hmm.
new client, a new coachee.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
course, the short chemistry is, oh, this person is like me, and so they'd be a good
Mm-hmm.
coach. What I
Yeah.
feel you're advocating there is almost like an anti-chemistry vibe. It's not quite what you're saying, but that could be quite useful. Is like going in and actually seeking cues where this person is going to offer very different
Mm-hmm.
perspectives rather than just
Yes,
feeling
exactly.
comfortable. Right.
Exactly. I'm not saying
Nice.
that you should walk away from your current code, because I do understand that collaborating with somebody who understands your challenges, understands where you come from, is very helpful, right? So that's why many executives go for executive coaching. That's why many people who are dealing with other challenges go to somebody who looks like them. However, if you want to solve a problem the same way that you're doing that, then that's not going to be helpful, right? So I'm just saying that add on an additional coach when it comes to inclusion, add somebody on who doesn't look like you, but also can offer a different perspective, can challenge you, can be your cheerleader, but can also challenge you and hold up a mirror in a very graceful way.
I think that sounds exciting and interesting. I also want to maybe just explore this point of the unseen. I think part of that also then says, actually, maybe I'm making huge assumptions just because on the face of it, this person looks and sounds like me.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
that everything else about them will do the same. Whereas there may be a huge cognitive difference, or let's say the neurodivergent piece, or just life history that I could be making assumptions that they don't offer that same level of variety.
Sure.
Anyway, I'm caught in a little bit of a bind there, but I'm not contesting your point. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I'm going to pursue it. I just there's also this unseen element that we can then make assumptions because the face is the same, that the backstory and the unseen is also the same, which would be unfair.
Yeah. And I get that.
Does that make sense?
Given your life experience or work experience, your mind is crafted in a particular way, and our mind goes for the quick exit, the quickest route, right? So that's where the danger of activating unconscious bias lies, right? I just want you to stop yourself, be aware of your bias traps, so that you know that you don't fall into those traps in the future anymore.
Absolutely. Oh, well, that's really helpful, and I appreciate it. And so you're talking. If we rewind a little bit, you talked about, for example, you used as an example the kind of open office environment. So I'm in that scenario, and I use that just as an example. How do I influence the culture if I see things that are unhelpful? That could be just one symptom of other things going on. How do I influence this cultural environment to help it to be a more productive working place for everybody?
Why not create a recipe together with your team, an inclusion recipe? What is needed for you to feel included in the workplace or in this environment? What are the elements that you need so that we can all agree to honor that? Within the boundaries of the company, because we cannot ask for Disneyland or something else, right? Or a candy shop. We need to also be aware of the boundaries of the leader and the team. But given that, everything that's within those boundaries, what do you need from us to feel included? It's a very simple question, but it's a question that is majority of the time not being asked. And that's a miss.
Yeah. Great. I think that's super. Now, I'm conscious in the conversation we're having that I may be missing some stuff here that's really important that I'm not asking about. And just around this topic of neurodiversity and inclusivity, what's the thing that you really want to help people kind of get across that perhaps we haven't spoken about? What's in your heart that's like, look, Simon, you're missing the point. Like let me speak plainly. What is it that we need to be talking about?
I do want to address, when you listen to what's happening in the US, where the words or the letters DEI are being villainized, right? I want to demystify that, because diversity, equity, and inclusion, there is an image online with the tree. And you have the tree or you have the bicycle. Let's bring it up to the bicycle terms, given that I'm in the Netherlands. We are known from biking, right? There is this image about equality where we are giving everybody the same, and everybody gets the same apple, everybody gets the same knives, and everybody gets the same tools. But I've just disclosed that I'm neurodivergent. So that's a hidden disability that I have, which also causes a lot of people to maybe not to disclose their hidden disability, or to disclose, right? So that's also something that the workplace and the management and also leadership need to acknowledge, that is our environment neuro-inclusive? inclusive for all. So not only those who are on the autism spectrum, but also those who have ADHD and other challenges, right? And how do you find out? Ask that question anonymously so that people can share without being penalized for disclosing their disability. And on the other hand, you also have equity, and we need to strive for equitable places. And equity means that I'm going to turn the light on myself again. Equity means that as a very tall person, 6'1", 1 meter 86, I'm not able to travel towards Paris from Amsterdam with a standard bike. I need a tall person bike because otherwise you'll be excluding me maybe from the beginning due to my other challenging disability, and that is I broke my ankle and it's now at 85%. But maybe I need an extra tool, or maybe I need an extra adjustment to be able to join the company and everybody towards Paris, right? So we need to create questions, ask people the question, what do you need to amplify and boost your performance in the workplace? What can we provide for you within those boundaries as well, so that we can support you? But I'm talking about neurodivergent people because oftentimes we are not acknowledged. Many people don't disclose it or don't even notice, right? I'm 44 now, and I just found out 3 years ago that I'm neurodivergent. So, mind you,
Yeah.
the rest of my life, I have walked around with not knowing that I'm neurodivergent. But I always knew that I've been always told that I'm weird or the odd one out or I'm doing too much. And I'm just like, yeah, but that's how my brain works, right? That's how, I don't know how to disclose that. That's how my brain works. Um, and there's so many talents sitting at home not being able to work because workplaces are not amplifying neuroinclusivity, not within their teams, but also not giving management the tools or leaders the tools to become neuroinclusive as well.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And I love the word belonging. This sense of people feel
Mm,
like they belong, and
yeah.
in the workplace and within a team, within any community, really, that they got the sense
Mm-hmm.
of feeling like they belong.
Mm-hmm.
What were some simple things that you would encourage leaders to do to help their team members to belong, in addition to what you've shared?
I want to describe what belonging looks like for me, right? Belonging looks like for me when I go to an office and there is a split between open office but also between silent environment or silent rooms or spaces where I can recover. Belonging means, as a mom, I'm looking at it from a mother lens, that maybe when I become pregnant that there's also a mom's room so that I don't have to produce any milk at the restrooms. This is the current state that many moms or many parents are going through, that their workplace doesn't provide a sufficient space for them to produce breast milk. And on the other hand, this is a trend that I've seen lately right now, is that many modern offices, or they have been modernized, that the heavier the door, the better it seems. And I'm going to decipher that. So after today, when you walk into a new office or a new environment, check if the door is heavy or not. Oftentimes, they don't even have a button to press, and which means that I have to power lift to enter that building, not realizing that you're asking a lot of me because that power comes from my ankle. And that's me being able to walk like 80%. What about
Mm-hmm.
those who are in a wheelchair? What about those who are dealing with other disabilities that find it challenging to even walk through your door because why? The doors are too heavy.
Yeah, I have to say that's something I haven't even considered before. And I
Yeah,
can think of a building now at one of my clients where,
yeah,
yeah, the doors are
yeah,
heavy. The doors are difficult for
yeah,
me to manhandle. So yeah, it's interesting.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Since when do we need to power lift to open doors?
It's a good question. It's a good question. one of the things that I'd love to maybe move towards finishing on, you've got this self-leadership was the first thing that you mentioned
Yeah.
as a lesson that you wish you'd learned earlier, is this idea of
Mm-hmm.
leading self and seeing the power of that. And I'd love to come back to that, and it can be linked to what we've talked about. What is it? You touched on some elements of this earlier, but again, how do you help somebody to start seeing that as someone that's just in university or coming into their first
Mm-hmm.
role? And you talked about demystifying this leadership word, perhaps. Like, how do you go about doing that so that people can connect with it and see it as a useful thing?
I'm going to use a word that I think, and I've seen it on your LinkedIn profile as well, purpose. Everybody has purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
when you find out what people their purpose are by asking that question, where do you see yourself, not in 3 years or 5 years, where do you see yourself within 2 years or maybe next year? And what do you need for that? How can I help you as a manager, as a leader to achieve that? That second question is often missed. All the time, people ask during the interview, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I tell my people or tell those who I coach, I tell them, ask them the question back. How are you going to help me reach that particular goal, reach that position? Because it's not a solo journey that you are embarking. It's a journey and a collaboration with the team members, but also with leader as well, with the manager as well.
Great. Thank you. Okay, well, I think we could open this up into a whole series of other things. Okay, I'm going to come back to your third point, which is around learning,
Yeah.
and maybe it's just
Mm-hmm.
triggered a thought around coaching. This pursuit of trying to get more effective at being an inclusive leader and
Mm-hmm.
continuously learning and growing, what would be a couple of good coaching questions that could help me or somebody like me to expand my thinking and perspective on this topic?
I'm going to grab two cards from my card deck, and I'm going to ask the question. This is the card, and I'm going to
Yeah,
ask the question: what DEI moment would you like to revisit, and why? That's something that you can ask yourself. And the second
it's a great
question
question.
is: what commitment do you want to make when it comes to inclusion? What's in it for you? Because oftentimes people think that talking or doing something or activating something regarding diversity, equity, inclusion means that those in power, those in leadership position are losing something. But what if I could tell you that you're winning? You're winning because you are not dealing with talent leakage. You're winning because you are able to retain your talent, even accelerate your talent. You're winning because you are able to attract your talent. And those three things are going to be very valuable in the upcoming 5 years, given the fact that within Europe, there are different countries that are going to, let's say, stop people from abroad, or let's make it harder for people from abroad. Migrants come to Europe. So we need to deal with the talent that we already have here in Europe, right? And utilize that. And if they don't have all the skills, then include training, development programs so that they can become the future leader that you see in them, right? And look beyond the names or image and age, because we cannot afford to dismiss those who are older. Those who are older than 60, oftentimes they are young at heart and they could be ideal mentors. Activate reverse mentorship as well. So I would say look at all these different things because we need every generation in the workforce now and within 5 years as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love that framing of seeing this as an opportunity and as a win
Mm-hmm.
rather than the loss or the risk associated with
Yeah.
it. I think that's a
Yeah.
great way of framing and acting on that. Okay, so the last thing I want to come back to is your 20-year-old self again.
Mm.
And
Yes.
I'd love for you to imagine that she's sitting around the table. What advice would you give her noting the things that you said that were memorable about her, what advice would you give to her from your vantage point of being in your 40s now?
I would advise her to embrace her weirdness, but also to embrace her leadership skills as well. Activate that. That's what I would say to her. I have an audience, and it's funny that at a later age, it's funny that I had to become a mother to see what my power is and how I can utilize my power. And I would say don't wait until you become a mom. You can already start now and activate LinkedIn. Use that to build your credibility. For those of you who don't have LinkedIn, especially the younger generation, I would say invest in LinkedIn, invest in building your brand, invest in networking, because you never know where it may lead for you.
Great. So embrace your weirdness, activate your leadership, get a LinkedIn account. Those are the things.
Exactly.
Absolutely. This show is not being sponsored, by the way. So it's just
exactly.
Vivian, this has been really valuable for me. Thank you so much for being so open and providing some really practical suggestions as to how we can be more inclusive as leaders and actually as colleagues, as members of communities. I'm sure that's helpful, and I'm thank you for sharing some of the unseen aspects of you as well, for us to understand that more deeply. Much appreciated. If someone wants to develop this conversation with you in more detail, how do they go about doing that best?
It's easier to find me on LinkedIn, Vivian Acquah, very unique name. You will definitely recognize me with my hair, my ombre hair, right? And reach out. If you have any questions regarding what I shared, or you want to work on your inclusive leadership muscle, reach out.
Great. Thanks, Vivian. Wishing you the best of success throughout the rest of the year. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us at the After Dinner Leadership Table, and trust that you've got good value from listening to this episode. Thanks for being here. One question for you. The question is, so what? What will you do with what you've just heard? And here's a few suggestions. Number 1, lead with more purpose. 2, mentor with patience. 3, share with pride. You think of anyone who you know that would benefit from listening to what you've just heard, that would help them to be a better leader today or in the future. Please share, like, subscribe. It helps other people to consume the content. And we wish you all the very best of success. And please listen again to another After Dinner Leadership conversation.